Okay, good morning to all. We are on Hey Ches Amid Beis.
What do you want?
Hey Ches Amid Beis. I think I should.
You could go, so I don't have to go with him.
Okay, I muted everybody. We're on Hey Ches Amid Beis with 2, 4, 6, 7 lines from the bottom. And it's in the interesting, a very, you say this sugya. We had an Eid Echad come and say that this woman's husband died. Consequently, the woman remarried based upon his testimony. We said yesterday, a tremendous chiddush, that Mishuniguna Kilbar Abanan, to believe one aid linyan aid desisha. Not only one aid, we'd even believe woman. We'd even believe aid mipi. We even believe information from a shivcha. So Mishuniguna Kilbar Abanan, but it was with one addendum, provided that the woman, we know that daiko minsila, she's going to go ahead before she marries. She's going to check it out thoroughly, because if she doesn't, she really gets messed up terribly. And one of the things that get messed up terribly is she needs a get both. She has to take some mizeh. She has to leave both husbands, vavlad mamza from both husbands, and she needs a get from both husbands. So they're going to discuss those halachas. Says the Gemara, tzricha get mizeh. You need a get from each one, husband number 1 and husband number 2. Now, Bishleim Marishain T-boy get. Bishleim, the first one you need to get, she was legally married to him. Elam Yisheni, the second one, Amai. Why would you need a get? The Kedusha is not typhus, she's an Ashes Ish. It's nus ba'almahu. It's simply an act of nus. Why the need for a get from the second husband, quote unquote, who's not really a husband? So Amrav Huna Gzeira, Shemiyomru Girizev and Nashon. We're worried people will say, well, if she's married to the second person, she must have been divorced from the first person, married the second one. And if she doesn't receive a get from the second husband, right, people will say, look, a woman possibly could leave without a get. So to avoid that halachic technicality, that people might make a mistake, therefore you need a get from the second husband. So it's not machmas any ishus. It's not machmas a sefer krisis. There's nothing to be kairos over here, because there is no ishus. It's simply a gezerah. People mistakenly, what for future might make a mistake and think you can go out without a get. If that's the case, that you're worried, concerned, what people might say, sefer diktani, at the sefer, which is enough tzadik beis amid aleph, amrullah, they tell her, meis bailech, your husband died, viniskatsha, and she went ahead and accepted kiddushin from another man. In other words, the marriage was never consummated. There wasn't nisuin, but there was niskatsha. She accepted kedushin from another man. The achakach ba baila, and the first husband shows up. Muteres lach saloi. Since she never lived with the second husband, she's permitted to go ahead and return to the first husband. Hasam nami nema girish zeh v'kida zeh v'nimsa eishes ish yotzeh shloi beget. Why aren't we worried if the second husband doesn't give her a get? People will make the same mistake. They'll say, Nimsa that it's possible for one to go ahead, be married, and leave without a get. In other words, once there's a relationship between a second man and you're telling me it's a gezerah, why in our Mishnah do you make a gezerah to require a get? And the Mishnah later on, where obviously the answer is simply niskatsha over there, that you didn't require a get. It says, oilam boy get. No, it's not true. Over there also she needed a get. In that case where she married, she accepted kedushin from a second man, she'd also need to get gezerah shemawah. People might think they can go leave a kedushin without a get. Ihachi nimtzeh machzeh gushasai mishnus arsa. You have a case where you said mutalachsabah, guys, good. So he gave her a get. Now the first husband's taking her back. Isn't this a case of machzeh gushaso mishnus arsa? We know there's a halacha of machzeh gushaso, that a man, if he divorces his wife and she remarries, he can't take her back. There's a machlokis whether that's only by nisuin or even erisin, or no. If it's just erisin and the marriage was never consummated by the second husband, you will be able to take it back. Over here, nimsa, the second case, if she received the get, right, from the time of erisin, then l'chayra it's machzeh gushaso. And for the Gemara, Rabbi Yosi ben Kipar, the Mishnah goes according to Yosi ben Kipar, Damar min hanasurin asura, only someone whose wife consummated the second marriage. Mina Erisin, but if she just got engaged, betrothed, and accepted kesef kedushin or shnai kedushin, muteres. you'd be mutter to go back and take her back. Okay, so right now we're holding serve, right? Our Mishnah is speaking where what? You gave a get al skasera. The second Mishnah also you gave a get al skasera. Fred the Gemara, if you gave a get al skasera, why is it in the case of Machshir Gusha so? And for the Gemara, of course, it was only Machshir Gusha so from Erisin, and according to the opinion of Yossi ben Kippur. Fred the Gemara, Akasha on this shot. I make the Tani Seifa, Afapi Shenasulei Achron get, even though the second person gives a get from Erisin, Le Poslam in Akahuna. It doesn't pass from the kahuna. She's not a gerusha. She's not a gerusha. Since the second marriage wasn't a marriage, it doesn't pass from the kahuna. Mechlal deloy boy get. Mechlal, you could say that since it doesn't pass from the kahuna, that this get was totally what? Nothing. What happened? You accepted kedushin from another man after an eid echad it said your husband died. Mutter lasla, you can go ahead and take it back. And this get is not going to pass from the kahuna. If this get is not going to pass from the kahuna, it's nishkan get. Mechlal, you have to figure the boy get that she doesn't need a get. The boy get, because if you would need a get, a mile plus them in a kahuna. Why would it not pass from the kahuna? In other words, once you need a get, they're going to call this the reach get or the infamous shmek from get, then it's going to pass from the kahuna. Obviously, if you don't need to get, it doesn't pass from the kahuna. Says the Gemara. So we got a problem. Look at Rashi. Mechlal deloy boy get. I feel a bit rabbanon. Even the rabbanon, you would not need to get for the second husband. The boy get, like you're saying, you need to get. With rabbanon shema, people will say that you can get divorced without a get. I feel a reach get poisel kahuna. So guys, outside, we're saying the following answer. Really, you don't need to get from the second husband midaraisa. There is no kedushin over here whatsoever. The first husband's alive. The second husband's marriage is not a marriage. The first husband's alive. The second marriage is not a marriage. There's nothing to worry about. So what do you need to get? Our Mishnah says, people should not mistakenly think that a woman can go free without a get. Fred the Gemara. So how come in the Sefer you're not worried? How come in the Sefer you're not worried that if she accepted kedushin from another man, you don't need a get? Why aren't we worried that people will say she'll go free without a get? And for the Gemara, she needs a get. Okay, but this get is the Rabbanon. Fred the Gemara Kasha, if this get is the Rabbanon, how in the world can the Mishnah say that she's not puzzle from the Kahuna? Once the get is the Rabbanon, it's a Reach HaGet. And even Reach HaGet would passel from the Kahuna. So the fact that it says in the latter Mishnah, it doesn't passel from the Kahuna, is a Raya you do not need a get. Because if you would, it would passel from the Kahuna. Elamah, if it doesn't passel, there's no get. So back to the original question. Why are we worried? If you're worried, should people say you go free without a get? Why in the latter Mishnah don't you need a get? So we're holding by a kasha. And for the Gemara, Ella, what do you have to say? Ella, Lashon Charata, the teretz you gave is Nishkan teretz, you don't give a get. Ella Seifa Amri, they'll say Kedushay Toys Have. The reason why you don't need a get in the second case, they'll say the Kedushin's a toys, and since it's a toys, it doesn't require a get. The obvious question, Reishanami, our Mishnah as well, Amri Nisue Toys Have. The second Nisuin was what? Was a mistake. And therefore what? Why would they be worried that you need a get? So you shouldn't need a get. Again, if people are going to say it's a mistake and that's why you don't need to get in the Sefer, who are then the Reisha? When she gets married, why does she need to get from the second one? Al Gezerah? What kind of Gezerah is there? Toys? So if there's a toys, if you're not worried in the Sefer, you're not worried in the Reisha. And for the Gemara, no. Kansura Bonan. Reishanami Ami Nisui Toys have says Seifa Ami Kedushi Toys have Reishanami Ami Nisui Toys have says the Gemara Kansura Bonan. Since they went ahead and lived together, the Rabbanan made a knas to require a get. Freding where Seifa Nami Liknasua. The Seifa also lets kansa her. Says Maresha of the Surah Resha that an Avera was done. She lived with another man. Kansua. They kansa her that what and they need to get. Sefer the of the Isura, a sefer that she did not go ahead and do an Issa because she only accepted Nisuin, loy kansu rabbanan. So that's the answer to the kasha. Really, BMS, the ratio requires a get is because a knas. We consider since she went ahead and lived with another man when she should have checked it out, right? And since she lived with another man, what? When she should have checked it out and she didn't, they went ahead and they counsel her that she requires a get, right? And therefore they require a get, that, and people will think that she went free without a get. Mashen came in the Seifa, where there was only Kedushin and not Nesuin, and she never lived together, right? And therefore what? It's not necessary to need a get, and therefore she's not possible to the kahuna. Fighter. Ein look ksuba, she doesn't get a ksuba. My time at the Kilo Ram ksuba. What's the reason the Rabbanim metakin ksuba? K'tosh like kala be'einav lahoitzi. Man will get angry and want to divorce his wife. He's going to go ahead and look. He looks at his ksuba. We'll see what it's going to cost him. He won't do it. So the ksuba is her insurance. Her, in this case, take kalabein of loitzi. You want it adarabba. You want them to get divorced. So therefore, since there's no ksuba, it'll go ahead and make it easier for the husband to divorce her, which is exactly what we want. Ein leperis lemizainos lebelois. The Mishnah said she doesn't get peris. She doesn't get reciprocated for the peris milog. Lemizainos, she doesn't. If she borrowed money when her husband went overseas and showed up, he doesn't have to pay up the debt. Lebelois, nor the depreciation of any clothing that a milog that he might have used from the marriage till going out. Why? Because Tanai Ksuba, these are all Tanai Ksuba. Miri says Peris not, and Ksuba Dami. It's like a Ksuba. So once she doesn't get a Ksuba, Memela, the things that are schlepped along with the Ksuba, the Mizainis and the Blois, she won't get as well. Okay. Let's say she did take from each one, she did collect some money. Not Lemizeh or Mizeh, she has to return it. Shita, because it's Pasha, she has to return it. Says when Mao the Tame, I would have thought, even the Tafsa, since she's holding on to it already, Loy Mafkin and Mina, we're not going to go ahead and take it back from her. Kimash Malan. Kimash Malan that we will. Okay, so it takes say Mizeh, we said, Havlad Mamza Mizeh Mizeh. Okay, we said a Mamza, it's a Mamza by both of them, which is again, we're going to have to deal with on the Yomid base. Okay. So here's what's going to happen now. The Gemara is going to go in total digression, which seemingly has nothing to do with anything. But what happens by these digressions is they'll always bring in our Mishnah as a means of question or answer or support for something that was discussed. So it seems to be this Masechta, this whole part of Masechta of Masechta Yevamot that meets Masechta's Royim. We spend a tremendous amount of time in this Masechta discussing Truma. Tremendous amount. Now Truma, there's halachas about Truma that you have to take off minha. You can't take off minha ro'al yafa. You can't take off from lousy stuff on good stuff. You have to take off good stuff. And the same thing, you can't take off tamei v'tahar. In other words, we know that truma tameya is unique. The fact that you're able to burn it, you can't eat it, but you could burn it. In other words, you can use it as a fuel source, and therefore you have to give truma tameya to the kohen. If it's tamei mamish, you have to give it to the kohen because he could use it. Mashen can, if it's tar, you can eat it. Let's say you have a tar dika crop and you have a tamei dika crop. You can't be mafresh from the tamei dika crop on the tar dika crop because you're being mafsed the kohen. You're limiting the kohen to use it as a fuel source and not as an edible. So we're going to bring in these halachos and we're going to zushtell it to our Mishnah in the end. Let's see inside. Tanan Hassam, we looked over there in Masechta Trumas, Perik Beis, second paragraph. Ein tarmin min atamei ala tahar. Let's say you have a crop that's tamei and a crop that's tahar. You can't be mafresh from the tamei on the tahar because, as I said, you're going to be mafsed the kohen. The im taram, if you do it, what's the halacha? Now it depends. Bishoygeg, if you did it bishoygeg, truma say truma, the tamei is truma, and the tahar is upgeshet. It's upgeshet, right? It's usable. The nasid, however, if you did it on purpose, le'yasav le'klum, you did nothing. Now, when you say you did nothing, fellas, it can be one of two ways. Meaning you did nothing at all, and it's the status quo that it's all tevel, or it's truma. The tamei dikus is truma, and now I still have to be mafresh truma on the tar part. So le'yasav le'klum can be in one of two ways: completely, or no, just vis-a-vis being mitaking the tahar. I've done nothing, but the truma tameya is what is truma. This is machlokes amoraim in these two pshatim. Says the Gemara. My lo yasav leklum. What does it mean lo yasav leklum? Two pshatim. Rav Chisda Like asav like klum kol ikar. You didn't do anything whatsoever. You didn't do anything whatsoever, meaning the afilu hahi griva, even the literally the measurement of the truma tameya of the tameya, hada letivle. It goes back to being what? Tevel. And I guess a Yisrael will be able to use it because he's not Muslim in Tumah once it's up geshet. Reb Nassim Reb Oishia Amar lo yasav like klum l'takenes shirayim. You did nothing to go ahead and to untie the tahar grain. Aval truma, the aval truma have, but the tamei is truma. So again, I have tamei, I have tahar. I go ahead, I take this off this. I'm not supposed to. Says Reb Chisda, let's go back to square one. Says Rabbi Nassim Rabbi Ishia, no, this is nothing. You're still gonna have to separate from here, but this is truma. Right? That's what you're gonna have to do. And since I'm a non-kohen, I can eat the truma. That's the machlokes. We're gonna explain both shitas, guys. Again, important to know because we're going to expend a lot of time on these shitas. Okay, first Rav Chisda says Rav Chisda, you've done nothing. So let's analyze Rav Chisda shita. Rav Chisda, loy amak Rav Nassim Rabbi Ishia. Rav Chisda says you've done nothing. Does not agree with Rav Nassim Rabbi Ishia who says it's truma on the tmeya. The Iarmin have a truma. Maybe if you say it's truma, zimnin de pasha. 1 second. You're saying this is truma. Maybe you'll be paisheya v'lei mafrish, and you won't separate on the tahira. So it's a gezerah. We're worried that what? Really, be'emes, guys, it's truma. Guys, this is important. Really, guys, in my scenario, really, this is truma. Really, this is truma. You know what I'm worried about? If you say this is truma, I may come to not separate on this. And why? Because hey, if there's a shame truma on this, obviously this must be metukin, right? Or else what am I doing? So says Rav Chisda, I'll say there's no truma on this. In order to ensure that what? That I'll tie this. Now this is a problem, and this is the sugya. How could this be called truma? And now the Chacham say it's not. That midrash it's truma, and the Chacham are akka. No, it's not truma. If it's truma, it's truma. A duck is a duck, right? We said yesterday. How can you go ahead and change it? How would the Chacham get a power to say something's truma is not truma? That's going to be the problem in the sugya, and that's how we're going to get into our Mishnah. So again, the first shita, Rav Chisda says the reason why this isn't truma, really it is truma, but I'm saying it's not truma to ensure that I'll go ahead and tie this. That's what I'm saying. That's the shita of Chisda. So Maishna mehadit nan. Now, over here, you simply say you are worried. Why is this case of taking off from Tuma on Tahira different than the following case? Ditnan. Hatoirim kishais, someone is taking Truma off gourds. V'nimtzas mara, you find it bitter, you find it lousy. Avatiach melons, v'nimtzas ruach, you find they're ruined. Truma, what he took is Truma. V'yachsa v'yitroim, and you go ahead and do it again. V'yachsa v'yitroim, you go ahead and do it again. So why over here do we say it's truma when you're taking off from good and it turns out to be lousy? Over there, my tumas tyra, you say no, it's not truma at all. For the Gemara, shoygeg amazed karamis. What are you asking Gestira? Over there, you thought it was good. The lashon, guys, look at the lashon. Hatoirim kishuas v'nimtzis mara. Nimtzis means, and they were found to be. You didn't do it initially. V'nimtzis. It was found to be lousy. It was found to be ruined. It was found to be bitter. Therefore, it's a good truma. Mashenkin over here, been mazed, where I'm going ahead and taking off from the tamei on the tahira. Of course, it's no good. So, what kind of kasha are you asking Rav Chisda from what? From a shaygeg where you find out to be bad. I'm speaking about mazed. Says the Gemara, shaygeg and mazed karamis. Shagid layavi surah. Shagid, you didn't do an issa. What did you do wrong? Mazid kavi surah. You did an issa. You amassed the kain money by giving him lousy truma tameya that he has to burn. Okay, so that's not a kasha. But now I'll ask you another kasha. Let's take a look above, guys. Tan Hassan, back where we started. In tarmi min atameya la tahar, vim taram b'shogeg truma say truma. And if you do it b'shoygeg, it is good truma. Good. Now back by us. For Rami Shaygeg Shaygeg, I'll ask you from one Shaygeg to another Shaygeg. Hacha Katani b'Shaygeg Truma Say Truma. Over here, we just saw if you're Toirim min Hatame ala Tahar, this Shaygeg, it's a good Truma. Chasam Katani Truma v'Yachsai v'Yitroim. You have to go back and take it again. Our Mishnah is mashma by the case of Tamei B'Taira, it's Truma and you're finito, you're finished. Over there by the Kishuin and finding out to be Mora, that Vatiach Sarua, you'd have to go ahead, even though it's Truma, you'd have to re-Truma, you'd have to re-Taiv. Kasha Shaygeg Ashaygeg. One more time. You first asked Mezid Ashaygeg, not a Kasha. Now I'm asking from the opinion, if a person takes off Truma from Tameya, al Tahira, there's two dinim. Mezid, that's a Machlaikis. Shaygeg doesn't seem to Machlaikis. Everyone says Truma say Truma, that's it. No problem. Over here we're saying by when you're taking off from the Kishuim on and turning out to be lousy, it is Truma, and then you have to retake the Truma. Why? They're both Shaygegin. Why in our Mishnah do you not have to go ahead and retithe? And over here you're retithing. Says the Gemara, Chasam Shaygeg Karv Lemezid. Over there by the cucumbers and the melons, it's Shaygeg that's Karv Lemezid. The boy limiteme. You should have tasted it. You should have tasted it. Now, so let's get to the teretz and then we get to a problem. You could taste for 1,000,000 years, you won't be able to taste the difference between Truma Tahir and Truma Tameya. A duck's a duck. It's halachic thing. Mashenkin, if it's a physical mitzias, you could tell the difference. So by the shaygig of Truma Tameya, where I couldn't know the difference, what else could I do? It's a good Truma. Mashen came by the Avatiach and the Kishuim, where you could have known the difference and you should have known the difference. The time of Shaygeg is not enough to say you shouldn't retithe again, and you have to retithe. Now the question is, how in the world could you taste it? It's Tevel. You're not allowed to taste Tevel, guys. Something's Tevel. How could you go ahead and taste it? You should have tasted it beforehand. Tevel's Misi B'dei Shemayim. How could I taste it beforehand? So if you look, there's a little taisus. The second one from the bottom. Kloimer. Yafrish al mashahu mine, separate a little bit mine ubei, kidei sheyitay b'sulay. In other words, separate a little truma beforehand to taste. Obviously, you can't taste tevel, so it's speaking about where a case where you're going to go ahead and separate a little bit. Okay, so that's the difference in shaygeg and shaygeg. Says the Gemara, for Rami mezid amazid, and I'll go ahead and now and ask you a steer from amazid on amazid. Hacha over here by the tomb of a Taira, we say b'mezid lo yasa klum. You did nothing. Hasan Tanan over there regarding the following halacha. Okay. Everyone's still here. That's here. You know, when the Rebbe leaves the room, you're always scared that the Talmid might not be there. Okay, so now we're going to ask a stira mezid al mezid. Okay, we're going to ask a stira from the following. Our Mishnah in Trumis of what of Tuma L'Taira, taking off Truma from Tuma L'Taira, and the Mishnah regarding Atzis Nakov, Atzis Shein Nakov. Okay, we're familiar with this. Let's just go over it again. In order to be Chayiv Truma Deraisa, you have to be connected to Eretz Yisrael. If you have an Atzitz, literally a pot, a foul pot that has a hole in it, that's Nakov, so it's getting its nutrients from Eretz Yisrael, you be Chayiv Truma Deraisa. If, however, it's what? It's not it's closed, it's sealed, you'd only be chayiv truma d'Rabbanan. So now we have a problem. Let's see, with that in mind, let's see the problem. For Rami Mezid Amezid, 3 lines from the bottom. Hacha Katani, by Tuma V'Taira, why do we learn Lo Yasa Klum? You didn't do anything. And therefore, Machloikas, what says Reish Bechista, you have to redo it again. Chasam Ditnan, Hatoirim Mishe'ein Nakov. Al Nakov, if someone is taking off Truma, ein nakov, from one that does not have a hole in it, which is not chayiv deraisa. I'll nakiv truma, that nakov, right? Truma v'yachsa v'yitroim. You go ahead, what? You have to go and take a truma again. But why? What? But you did it both b'mezid. One's tamei, one's ein chayiv. Why by tamei you did nothing, and why by the other one you go ahead, what? And by nakov you have to take truma off again. Says the Gemara, I'll tell you the difference. Betray mine sayis. In 2 pots, a guy will listen. Bechad mana, in 1 mana loit saise, you won't listen. If you have 2 entities and you take off truma from one on the other, So people say, oh, the Chachamim are telling me that what? I didn't take off Truma. I didn't take off Truma. They're two separate things. Mashen Kain, if it's one pot, one's Tameh, one's Tahar, and I took off Truma already, no one's going to listen. Therefore, we say Lo Yasav Lo Klum. Okay, let's see Rashi on this, guys. Says Rashi. Betray manate sayas. In two pots, sayas to listen. Kloimar. Chasam, over there by the Einonakov and Nakov, keeping the betray mani, since they're obviously in two separate kalim, ki amrle choda Torah meidach, go ahead and take off truma from the other one, sayas lach, they'll listen to you. So I took off from the Einonakov on the Nakov. Now you're telling him, go take off on the Nakov. They'll listen to you. Because again, they view it as a separate entity. And we're not worried that if we tell him he's going to eat Pashay and not do it. We're not worried about that. Why? Because look, he'll tell you that part is not upkashay. That part is not tithe. It's two separate things. You took off from this and this. So good. You're telling me this is not upkashay. Okay, so I'll take off over here. They'll listen to you. And therefore it says truma v'yachsav v'yitrim. That one is truma and you go ahead and take off truma on the other one. He'll listen to you over there. However, they both grew in the same place. They know they're both in a place where you chayiv. And you're going to say, take this and separate another. They're not going to listen. They're going to say, I did the job already. So why do I have to do it again? In other words, let's view this together. You can tell the guy like this. This is Tameh, this is Torah. It's in one big pot, right? That's why it's in one big pot. My hands are in a big pot. You can tell the guy, listen, go ahead. This is Truma, and take off Truma over here. And the guy's going to say, take off Truma over here. I just took off Truma. So therefore, to avoid this, what do we say? There's no Truma at all, and that'll guarantee it. So in other words, later of Chist, I know it's Truma, but to avoid the possibility of not being mafish Truma, I'll say it's not Truma at all. Mashen came in, it's two separate pots. And I tell you, this truma is truma, but this isn't. Oh, this isn't a separate entity. I'll take truma off. So therefore, that's the chilik between tuma v'tayra and nakav and nakav, whether it's one entity or two entities. That's the way Rav Chisda answered any questions according to him. There was a second opinion, le'asav like klum. That was the opinion of Nassin, who said that this is truma, and then you have to go ahead and take truma off this as well. Okay, so now we'll analyze his opinion. Says the Gemara, when it says you took off the Tmei ala Tahira, you didn't do anything. What does that mean? Litakin Shirayim, it means the Mitakin, the Tahira, you still have to take Truma off that. Aval Truma, Have, but the Tmei is Amid base. But the Tmei is in fact Truma, the Tmei is Truma. Maishnami Haditnan, what's it different than the following? Min Hanokov al She'ei Nokov, if you take off from the nakov, from the raisa one, al she'ei nakov, truma soy truma, it is truma, le'seichel at sheyotzi aleha truma u'maisa mimakam acher. So this is what if you take off from the nakov, the one that's chayv the raisa, on the ein nakov, the one that's chayv the rabbanon. So you separate it from the chiyav ala patur, right? You'll say it's truma the rabbanon. But the Kohanim can't eat it until when? Until they take Truma Semaisa Mimakam Acher. Because Min HaTorah, it's not Chal Shem Truma. Since you separate it from the Chiyav Al Ptur, from the Nakav Al Einu Nakav, right? And therefore, what? It's not a good Truma, so you can't eat from it until you take Truma from Mimakam Acher. So the Gemara says, why don't we say the same thing over here? Why don't we say by Mafish Truma Al Tahira? Why don't we say that the kohen cannot go ahead and use it until he's metakin it? This truma really what is tevel gomer. This truma is tevel gomer, right? Let's see Rashi. Maishna mehadit nan. The kohen can't eat it until he takes truma meiser from another place. The mechaskinen lay betevel gomer will say that this is tevel gomer since he took truma off the chiyav ala patur. The kan kemoy came so to us by what? By the tamei v'tahar He shouldn't give it to the kayin. Shema yisraf tevel tameh. Maybe he'll burn it right away. Okay, so here's the din. I went ahead, I took off, this is pater, and this is chayev. Good? I took off from this on this. So it says it's truma, but the kohen, someone should take off trumas and mice on this. That's what we're seeing now. So like Reb Nassim Reb when this is tamei and this is tahar, you said this is what? He said this is truma, but this is not. Why can they go ahead and use this right away? The kash is on this. This tumadeka, it says the kohen can burn this right away. Why can the kohen by tahar tamei burn this right away? And we don't say you have to take off truma ma'isa on this. Yet when this was nakov chiyuv deraisa and this was ein nakov chiyuv derabanan, we'll say you can't use it till you go ahead and take off trumas and ma'isa from another place. That's the kasha. It's on the truma part. Again, loy Reb Nassim Rashia, this is tamei, this is tamei, this is tahar. Good. He said that what? That when loy asa klum, that you weren't attacking this. Okay, now so good. But this is truma. Can you use it right away? Yes. Fred the Gemara on Reb Nassim Rashia, I have a case where this is chayv deraisa, this is chayv derabanan. You took off this and this. You're telling me this is truma, but you have to be mafresh trumas and ma'asim makam acher on it, and you can't use it right away. That's the kasha. So Fred Gemara, my shnami hadid now. What's the difference in the following we learn? Min anakov al she'ein nakov. When you separate from a chiyuv deraisa and a chiyuv derabanan, truma say truma. It's a good truma. However, by seichel you can't eat from it. At sheyotzela truma ma'asim makam acher. So why by here you can burn it immediately every tumah v'tayra, and by chiyuv deraisa, chiyuv derabanan you can't. So it's shiny hacha. It's different by tumah v'tayra. The midaraisa truma ma'al yasahi. It's very very good truma. This is very good truma. In other words, there's a difference between guys separating tameya al tahira versus chiyuv on not chiyuv. By truma tameya there's a chiyuv. I shouldn't do it, but there's a chiyuv. Masha'en came where there's no chiyuv. It's different. So that's my chilik between truma tameya and atzitz nakov. Kid the Rebbe loy. Dom Rebbe loy. Minayin l'toyrim min hara ala yafa. How do you know if you're toyrim from something lousy ala yafa? Shetruma say truma. Dichsiv v'leisisu alav chet. Do not carry with you a chet. Ba'rimchem eschel b'mimenu. When you separate a schel by the good stuff from it. Now it says leisisu alav chet. Mashma by separating from the good on the bad on the good, meaning on the tameya on the tahira, you shouldn't do it. And if you do it, you're carrying a chet. V'mein kaddish, and if it doesn't work, nesiyas chet lama. Why is there a chet? In other words, if I did nothing, I didn't do an aveira. Don't separate min ha ra la yafa. Meaning, don't separate from the tameya ala tahira the sisul of chet. And you'd be carrying a chet. What's the chet? That you messed up the kohen, right? He's going to be mafsid. He can only use it to burn. If there's no chalois, you didn't do anything. Elamai, you see, there is a chalois. And that's the teretz between what? The kasha you're asking. By tumah v'tayra, there's a chalois of truma. And the mela what? Midaraisa, it's available. Let the kohen burn it right away. Masha'en came when you take off from the chiyuv on not chiyuv, from the nokov and ain't a nokov, it's not truma ma'aliyasa. And therefore you have to go ahead and take it makam acher. So im ein kaddish neschet lama mikan l'toyrim min hara ala yafa shetruma say truma. Masha'en came when you go ahead and by the atzitz nakov it minat chiyuv ala b'tor there's no truma klal but mela what therefore you have to take off truma from another place. That's the difference between the two. Now believe it or not, we're still in Masechta Yevamot, guys. Believe it or not, we're still in Masechta Yevamot. We're still on a Mishnah that says if two women get married, a man's married, a woman's married to two men, mamza. Right now, you could have fooled me. I think we're just saying Masechta Zroyim. Okay? So now, let's go over. What we need is the following. What did Rav Chisda say? If you go ahead and separate from the Tumah ala Tahira, he said lo yasa klum, meaning it's nothing. Meaning that this is Truma de'araisa, but since we're worried, if you say this is Truma, you may not come to be mafish Truma on this. Okay, it's not Truma, it's Tevel. Go ahead and redo it. That's so comes out, guys. Here's the nidun of a gandan. How can this be Truma de'araisa? You just told me, right? Mamish, it's Truma. There's a chalaisa Truma. You have a pasuk. There's a chalaisa Truma. Yeah. So if it's chalais truma, how can Rabbi Chisda be oika dav min Torah? Says no, it's not truma. Go back and redo it. How can he do that? It is truma. Leisis love chait. Fred the Gemara Kasha. Amalei Rabbi Rav Chisda. Lidi dach the amit like asav like klum. You who say you accomplish nothing, that it's not truma. Right? Kol ikar. The afilu who griva this measurement hada letivle goes back in the tevel pile. My timer, and the reason being gezeira dimel pasha. Maybe if you call it truma, you'll be pasheya v'lei mafish min, right, and you won't separate from the tahira. Miyik and midi anything the midaraisa have a truma. Midaraisa it's truma. Like sislav ched, guys. Ain't midaraisa gadol mizu, right? Zichet, we just wrote a pasuk. It's midaraisa. Umishum dilma pasha, and because of a concern that what you'll be pasheya, afku rabban lechulin, that rabban go ahead and make it chulin. He bezdin masna laka davim in a Torah. Could bezdin go ahead and make a tanai, make to be oika davim in a Torah? You know, so this is why we brought this in. Why? Because the next piece of Gemara. It's fascinating. Amalei said Rav Chisda to Rabbi, V'yatlei tizbra, you don't hold that they can be oika davim in a Torah? V'tanan, havlad mamzer mizeh mizeh. Only Gemara can do this, guys. Only Gemara can do this. This is the connection. If she gets married al P.A. Dechad, and she has a child from the second husband, and goes back, remarries, and has a child from the first husband, it's a mamza both. Now, Bishleim Misheni mamza, very good from the second one's a mamza. She was an Eshes Ish, of course it's a mamza. Elamei Rishain, the child from the first husband, Amai, why is it a mamza? Ishtahi, Yisrael Ma'al Yehu. She's his wife. It's a fine-fledged Jew. He's a fine person. So why in the world are you calling it a mamza? Ella says in Gemara, so what? You're calling him a mamzer, and what are you doing? Because Sharina lay b'mamzeres. By calling him a mamzer, you're permitting him to marry a mamzeres. You're being an oiker adavim in a Torah. Midaraisa, he's a Jew. You're calling him a mamzer, permitting to marry a mamzeres. Midaraisa, this is truma. And you're calling it what? You're calling it not truma. How can you be oiker adavim in a Torah and say it's not truma, and you're feeding it what to a Yisrael? Amalei, so said Rav Chisda back to Rabbi. Says Rabbi back to Rav Chisda, excuse me. Says Rabbi back to Rav Chisda, Hachi Amar Shmuel. This is what Shmuel said. Asa bin mamzeres. There's no heter over here. We're calling him a mamzer, but what? He can't marry a mamzeres because he's a Yisrael. He's a Yisrael mamzer. The Chenk Yasser Rav and Rav Yochanan Asa bin mamzeres. But my karle mamzer. La'oisrei b'bas Yisrael. We're calling him a mamzer that he can't what? Can't marry a bas Yisrael. Says Rashi, La'oisrei b'bas Yisrael. The concept of almahu, it's a kanas. It's not you're not being oiker or anything. It's a kanas. Ulahachmir. Velasas sayog l'toira. Ve'enzu akira. You're not being oiker. You're not telling him that he can marry a mamzeres. Because you'd be oiker min Torah guy saying Yisrael can marry a mamzeres. That will be oiker of min Torah. Telling a Jew that he can marry a mamzeres, you'd be oiker of min Torah. All I'm doing over here is making a sayog around the Torah. He's still a Jew. I'm just saying, and he can't marry a mamzeres. So I wasn't oiker anything. I'm just counseling him that he has the din of a mamzer that what? To be machmir that he can't marry Yisraelis. That's not being machmir. To be oiker al divrei Torah akirahi, that would be an akira. Yes.
Who could he marry?
Giyaris. Giyaris, not called kahal. Not called kahal. Can marry Giyaris. Okay, we had the Gemara, right? So very geschmack. Let's go through the dialogue. It's just, you know, if you are an ADD, the Gemara will treat you to be tremendous ADD, and then it'll go ahead and bring you back because in order to understand what's going on, you got to focus a great deal. This is the classic case. You're Masechta Yevamot. We're dealing about a case where what? A woman messes herself up by being married without checking out well. She mamish is usher on this, mamza, the ganza, 9 yards. Punk, you bring this thing about Rav Chisda. God happens if you take off truma from a deraisa, from a tahira, tamei to tahira, then the whole thing is but this whole thing is redo. Now, what's the redo? How can this be truma? And it is. And you're telling me redo, you're being like a daven a Torah by saying that this is truma, taking the name truma off it. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Look, Here we have a Yisrael, and we're making him into a mamza, and he can marry a mamzeres. We're being like a dov min Torah to marry a mamzeres. And for the Gemara, we're not being like of anything. He's a Yisrael, he can't marry a mamzeres. But we're calling him a mamza. Why are we calling him a mamza? So like that he can't marry a bas Yisrael. That's not being like a dov min Torah. That's making a sayag around the Torah. That's going ahead, taking the existing Torah and making a more protective thing. Guys, you good? Baruch Hashem. Okay, so that's the Gemara Vaita. We're not leaving this so fast. Shalach le Rav Chisda le Rabba, biyad Rav Acha bar Rav Huna. Sent Rav Chisda to Rabba in the hands of Rav Acha bar Rav Huna. V'ein bezdin masna laka dov min Torah. This question you have that bezdin can't be oiker dov min Torah. V'atanya me'ein mesai adam yorish esishta ketana. Okay, fellas, now there's two ways for a man to be married to a ketana. One, the classic way, is her father died, and the Chacham gave a right for the brother or the mother to marry her off in order that she should be under the protective auspices of a man. We also know if before she reaches the age of Nairis, she's ma'ain, she refuses the marriage, she doesn't need a get. And then we had that Mion, we had that Sugi Arucha in Masechta Yevamot. Okay. Now, who is Yorish? There's another way to become Ketana. Is if the father married her off, which is deraisa, and the husband died or divorced, she doesn't go back to her father, she's on jurisdiction, he marries over herself. That's called the Yisrael B'chaye Aviyah. Anyway, so now you have this Ketana that's married to a man, and we want to know at which point in time can you inherit her? When she stands up to her height. Beis Hillel says when you go to the chuppah. Now, what does it mean she stands up on her height? Says Rashi, she reaches the age of 12 and a half, and she brings simanim of sa'aris of hair. Taisvith, b'kaimasa, pirish b'kuntris, shegil lepirka, b'shanim, u'v'habas sa'aris, frektoisis, ve'ina loshin mashmakain, dimkain, havile lemema mishetagdil. Kaimasa is mashma physically standing. Tagdil is mashma growing in years. According to Rashi, it should say mishetagdil when you grow in years. Elamari mishetame b'kaimasa means hainu sheniris gedoyla ksas. She, you wake up one day, you look at your daughter, and she's a little bigger. She got a little taller. Even if she's not 12 and a half. So it's an earlier time. So Mechlekes Rashi and Taisus what exactly kaimasa means. But that's the criteria for inheriting. According to Beis Shammai, if you reach this point, a man is katana and she dies, the man would inherit her. Says Beis Hillel, no, you need knisa l'chuppah. Rabbi Eliezer Oimer, mishtoil of the time you boil her. V'yarsha. U'metamala v'cheles beginay truma. Okay, so let's get three sheetas. At which time do you inherit? According to Beis Shammai, when she stands up, which time the kaimasa, machlek is what that means. According to Beis Hillel, which is nichnas l'chuppah, and according to Rabbi Eliezer, when she boil. Okay, we'll get back and explain these sheetas after we get to the question. Now, what are the halachas? V'yarsha, he'll inherit her, and if he's a kohen, u'metamala, and he was a kohen, v'cheles beginay truma, she's a bas Yisrael, she'll eat truma. Now, going over the brisa, even if there was no chuppah, you can't have a beer without a chuppah. Because Beis Hillel's one said she gets to the chuppah, because so we need both things. You need a certain amount of physical maturity, according to Taisus, according to Rashi, you need a full-fledged physical maturity, and nichnas l'chuppah, v'hachi kamu leBeis Shammai and Beis Hillel. The kamisa b'shetil if you say just amida l'chuppah, if she's at this stage of physical maturation or appearance, then chuppah helps. It doesn't help. Chuppah. Rabbi Eliezer says, Mishiti boil from the time you do bia. The bia doesn't mean anything. Rabbi Eliezer says. So why would that make you inherit if you boil? It says boil. Say that one when you magdalati boil. Okay, so we just explained the brayso, so we didn't ask any questions yet. Our question is going to be that the chacham can be oiker dav min Torah. So we just explained the machlokes. Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai saying it's not enough chuppah, you need a certain physical maturation. Says Rabbi Eliezer, you need bia. Not only bia, you need one when she gets older in a bia. Okay, so now kitani mias. Nonetheless, we learned Yarsha, you inherit her. Now, who normally would inherit a katana? Her father. So if the father's alive, because she lost the right to marry her off, she married herself off after she had been divorced from her previous husband, or then the father will inherit her. And if not, her brothers, the Yarshei Av will inherit her, not the husband. It goes back to a father, not the husband. So when saying Yarsha, it's because she's a full-fledged wife. Says the Gemara the following. Again, this is a katana, guys. Katani Mia Yarsha. V'hachad midaraisa avua yarisla. Midaraisa, who's the Yirish, is the father. She's a katana. Again, and kedushin's only the Rabbanon. Umidrabanon yarisla, right? Bow. And midrabanon, they went ahead. They were oikar dav minatayra. They were oikar the Yerusha that should have been rightfully to the father's side of the family, and took it away and gave it to her husband, which is the Rabbanon. So you see the Chacham be oikar dav minatayra. And for the Gemara, there's not an akira over here. There's a special waiver when it comes to monetary matters. What's that special waiver? Hefker Bezdin Hoya Hefker. Bezdin has the capacity to go ahead, take your property and be mafki your property and give it to who they want. So over here, it's not working mitaris Yerusha. It's working mitaris Hefker Bezdin Hefker. Bezdin's taking her property, it's being mafka her property and giving it to her husband. Not that they will oikar and say she's the Irish and not the father. They're going ahead and saying, since the guy married her, I'm taking the money, being mafka the money. It's now ours. We can do whatever we want with it, and we're giving it to the husband. That's not being oikad in the Torah. That's using the din of hefka bezdin hefka, which, as we'll see in a second, has a source in the Torah. So we find it from a Kabbalistic source. Shnemar, this is speaking about Ezra when he got the people to come back to Bavel. He counted the people when they come back from Bavel. And it says the following: and anyone who does not come to the meeting place within 3 days, all their rechush, their possessions, will be doomed. Meaning, and we'll do it. He'll be bottled, he'll be separated. We're going to make it us to him. So you see that Ezra said all their rechush. So we see a remez in the Navi that Bezdin has, right? In this case, Ezra, the Ab Bezdin, will be able to go ahead and be mafkin in the chassan. He has another source in Sefer Yeshua. Ela nachles ashen nichalu elazar hakoyin Yeshua binon v'rashay avos lematos b'nei Yisrael begoyrel. Now, what is the Rashi avos doing over there? Says the Gemara. What's going on over here? What are the heads doing by the avos? Are the heads of shvatim? Just like fathers can go ahead and be machlin their children, whatever they want. So to the heads, they can go ahead and do whatever they want. Give it to whoever they want. Okay, so therefore, these are two sources for Hefker Bes and Hefker, but you were in Oikar Dav Min HaTorah. Continuing along that line, we said not only is he Yerisha, but if he's a Kayin, he could be Metama to her. Now here's the question: how can he be Metama to her? Aren't they Oikar Dav Min HaTorah? A Kayin can only be Metama to his wife. She's only his wife with the Rabbanon. So you see, the Rabbanon could come along and be Oikar Dav Min HaTorah. So from the second halacha of marrying the Katana, not from the Yerish part, which we avoided with the din of Hefker Bes and Hefker. How in the world can you go ahead and be Metamata? The Kohen is Mitsuba, not to be Metamala Mesim. How can you be Metamata? I will hacha midraisa of Metamala. Midraisa, the father's Metamata. Umidrabanan Metamala Baal. And over here we're making that it's Midrabanan, the Baal is being Metamata. So how could that possibly be? Says Gemara, I'll tell you how that is. Mishum Dahavila Meis Mitzvah. She's considered a Meis Mitzvah. Now, you always think Meis Mitzvah, you walk along the road, you find somebody dead. That's not what a Meis Mitzvah is. Here's the definition of Meis Mitzvah. Umi avi Meis Mitzvah, Vatanya, Ezeu Meis Mitzvah. Guys, here's what a Meis Mitzvah is. Kol she'ein lekoivrim. Anyone who doesn't have barriers. Koira, you call. V'acherim oinim maisai. And others people say, we'll bury her. Ein zeh Meis Mitzvah. Ein zeh Meis Mitzvah. So in other words, a Meis Mitzvah is you call and no one's going to come. Hachanami over here, Kivin de la Yarsila, since the father and Mishpacha no longer inherit her because of the din of Hefka Bes and Hefka, Karya, you'll call V'lei Anyala, and they won't answer the call. Good, and they won't answer the call. Okay, so what do we see over here? That in fact it's a Meis Mitzvah. So that the husband's burying her is not again Torah's full-fledged wife and being Oikar Dav Min HaTorah. It's a din Meis Mitzvah. Just like the din of Yerusha was a din of Hefker Bes and Hefker, it wasn't din of Yerusha, and you weren't Oikar din of Yerusha. Who adin inyan misa? You're not being oiked a din of misa from the father to him. But you're saying is it's a meis mitzvah. Why? Because the father's not going to bury his mishpacha won't bury because they don't get the money. So we'll stop over here. Wish everyone a great yontif.